are you feeling this morning?
I'm feeling fine.
Okay.
A little sleepy, but I'm still not sleepy today.
There will be some lights here. This is going to be the first.
Oh, wonderful. She's covered.
But she's doing our chronology session. Hi.
Hello.
How are you, Tiffany? Okay. Thank you, John. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate it.
Hi.
This is our new dean, Tiffany Lopez.
Nice to meet you. Oh, thank you.
Yeah. We have 3 different categories of awards. This is in research, this is in performance, and this is in composition. So if you're comfortable announcing the research award for outstanding, you can do that. Now hand it to you and you hand it to them.
Okay, so Randy.
Now, where would you like me to be?
Down front there, and then you can come right on.
Okay.
And then if you'd like to stay, you are welcome. But if you need to go, we'll understand.
Thank you so much.
And Tiffany, a discreet way of getting out, you can either go out the back here or
Okay.
Thank you so much.
I think for you see on media to capture yourself, you have to be here. Yeah.
Yes, so I'll be here, and then
If I go that way, I can just go out that sideway right there.
Correct.
The dressing room?
Yeah. Shawn. Lisa, could you do me a favor and find Shawn Okpebholo? Marvin? Just somewhere here. I put your bag here. Sit on the opposite side. Just make it easy for you to get up on stage. The last award is going to be the research performance. That's because it has you can read. I don't think they have any because I've written the first item. Okay. Can you read it? Okay. Darryl just wants to for you. Oh, that's great. Okay. So if you wanted to instruct something simple to say about things, that's fine. I'd like for you, as the keynote leader of the award, to hand it off to the next person. I will hand you the award. I'll do it in that order. So yours is going to be this person. I got one. Yours is going to be this one first. So that you can, it's easier to get up on stage, and we are going. My welcome. How are you, by the way? Dance chronology. Your speech, half hour, right? Less than that, okay? And then the awards. That's going to be great. So do I wait? I'll walk up and okay. After. So it's after Hansonia. Good. Right. Good. Yeah, two pieces.
Yeah, I just told him something. And I would just, what I would like to hear is from the researcher and the work as an educator. Database, spiritual database. Yeah, she is. I saw her yesterday, I think. You know, people are tired that they traveled, I think it was Sunday yesterday. That's
And the beat goes on.
well, maybe some of them. All right, so
So it really is not
yeah, that's great. So that's
so the order is my welcome, the dean's welcome, then the chronology, keynote speech, after Marvin's speech, then I'll invite you. I'll come up and I'll invite you.
oh, okay. After the speech, then I'll just.
Yeah, exactly.
Jason, you good?
Okay.
Are you good?
Good morning. So the 25th anniversary celebration of the African American Art Song Alliance Plenary Session is now in session, and you are officially welcomed. Behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren and sisterin to join together. Yeah, and we have a lot to celebrate, not only 25 years, but the fact that we are all here, present in the body, not absent from the body, present in the body, most of us in the mind, with plain voices, and I don't hear nary a cough among you. So that's a blessing. We have to acknowledge those things. Particularly as the focus of this conference has gone intentionally to reflecting on the past 5 years, it's impossible for us to ignore the upheaval that we've experienced, both socially and in our health, the losses that we've experienced, but also to celebrate the fact that we are still here. We're able to meet together in person. I'd like for you to reflect on that, because it's no small feat. I need to extend my heartfelt thanks to my advisory committee that helped me put this together. They very wisely I was saying, well, I think probably, we started planning this like about 2.5 years ago. I said, I think probably by 2022, we'll be through this. And they said, no, Darryl, no. I don't think the people will be ready to get on a plane about making their plane reservations November 2021. So we decided to push that to October, which caused a kerfuffle with me to say, okay, how do I get everything together? But I think God has smiled on us and given us grace that there was a little bit of a pandemic surge, and then everything died down, and we were able to meet together. My wonderful advisory council, my advisory committee, the inestimable Willis Patterson and Louise Toppin, George Shirley, and Dr. Philip Harris, so doctors all, Philip Harris. So I'd like for you to give them a round of applause. Take a bow. And to my colleagues here at the Claire Trevor School of the Arts, particularly in the music department, especially my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Nina Skolnick, who was the first to say, Darryl, what can I do to help? How can I help? I mean, throwing themselves, making themselves available, and accepting my phone calls at all hours of the day and night, and helping me to wrap my mind around how to make this work best. So I really would like for you to acknowledge Dr. Nina Skolnick. This is a time of major change here at the School of the Arts. We have a new chair in the music department who you had an opportunity to meet yesterday, Dr. Nicole Grimes. She's not new to our faculty, but she's new in the position of chair, and she's doing a wonderful job. And we have a new dean. Those of you that were with us 5 years ago will remember our salute from our dean, and our current dean has been gracious enough to consent to welcoming you as well. So this is Dr. Tiffany Lopez.
Thank you so much, Dr. Taylor. I am just so thrilled to be here to offer welcome to you on behalf of the Claire Trevor School of the Arts. It's an extraordinary pleasure and point of pride to be supporting the Art Song Alliance quinquennial, is that how one pronounces it? Hosting the quinquennial here on our campus. The work, it's wonderful in talking with so many of you this morning to learn of your connection with Dr. Taylor, either as mentees or mentors or long-term colleagues and friends. And so I'm just really excited to hear about the conversations that you'll be having throughout the day. I think the work, I looked at the website in preparation for visiting with you today, and when I was interviewing for this position, Dr. Taylor was on the search committee, and as part of preparing for meeting him and connecting with him, I discovered the work of the Art Song Alliance many, many months ago, and was so incredibly impressed and excited about the existence of that work, because as young students It's very important that we understand our histories, that we have the paths for understanding that we're stepping into legacies, and who our artistic kinfolk are, who our artistic foremothers and forefathers are, as well as being able to have the uplift of that and understand the artistry and the central importance of the art song to the study of music, and in so many different layers, from the craft of music making to understanding the way that music documents histories that have just now started to be fully documented, and also the way that music is a cultural glue bringing us together and really reminding us of the social impact of the work that we do. I'm also in looking at the Art Song Alliance, I want to thank all of you who are very involved in the web pages and the teaching of this work, because you are making that archive very publicly legible and accessible, being able to learn about Omar and the building of Omar with the LA Opera, and to understand the history about Margaret Bonds, and hear our greats like Toppin share their artistry. It's just extraordinary to be able to visit the website and discover the power of the art song. I'm thinking a lot this morning about the story of Mary Bonds coming across Langston Hughes' poem while she was a student at Northwestern in the basement of the library, and the power of her reading that work in the middle of thinking about struggling with social racism, institutional racism, and the cost that she was shouldering to pursue her dreams and extend her study and her artistry in music, and the uplift that is shared through her story of discovering that poem, and then of course her going forward to compose a piece from Langston Hughes' poem, Negro Dreams of Rivers, and then set that to music to have others encounter and share in the power of that work and create these different tributaries of discovery. I think as a young student, I know for myself, I'm a first-generation student. I left home at 15. There's all kinds of story there. But her story really resonated for me because every piece of, I'm a granddaughter of migrant farm workers, and when there's generational violence and poverty on both sides of my family, such that people never talked about their histories that they were carrying. And when I discovered art and poetry and music and the stories behind the making of it, it told me the things my family couldn't talk about because of the traumas that they were carrying, but made so much sense, including for me about my own vision and voice that I was carrying and the kind of art making I wanted to share with the world through my scholarship and my own practice as an artist. And I think about a young Margaret Bonds having that kind of powerful resonance when in her encounter in the library. All of you are taking this work out of basements and putting them in the main floors of the spaces that we work in. So I want to affirm that and say how what a gift this is, the work of access to make sure everyone can come to this gathering together, that it's free and accessible and open to the public, and also wanted to affirm the incredible power of this work and the conversation that you're all having, because I imagine the students in this room, the impact it will have for them, and I imagine how important it is for all of us to be in community and to be able to have this uplift and this time in person together, coming out of the year plus that we've been away from one another in gatherings like this. So I give you my heartfelt welcome. Thank you so much for the work that you bring to the Art Song Alliance and for coming together with us. And I want to thank Dr. Taylor for just his extraordinary excellence and commitment to the field and the leadership in this room, from Dr. Taylor to mentors and mentees. So with that, a very heartfelt welcome and thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it's useful for us to acknowledge some of the, all of you are, of course, loved in my sight. You know that, right? So if I single somebody else out, don't think that, but he didn't see me, didn't he? But among us, it's an extraordinary pleasure and privilege to have, for the first time in our conference, the past presidents, two past presidents, a current president, and president-elect and first black president of the National Association of Teachers of Singing. So Karen Brunson, Carol, oh shoot, Darryl, when you start, and I know Carol by her first name, Carol Blankenship, and Diana Allen, and Alexis Davis Hazel, and Alan Henderson. So thank you for coming. If we would be acknowledged. And we have two, count them, two past presidents of the National Association of Negro Musicians. I thought I saw Byron, and then I didn't. He's probably off somewhere practicing. So past President Byron Smith and past President Dr. Willis Patterson. Thank you. Our conference would not be the same without our next speaker. She has been here from the very beginning. She sets the tone, she establishes the bar, and she is the bar. You say that this is what you, from here on up, try and meet this standard if you can. I had the privilege of interfacing with her when I was a young artist, when I was competing for the Young Artist of the Future for Los Angeles. I was still a collegiate student, and I know the advocacy that she established for me. I remember there was someone that was kind of fighting against my winning the competition. She said, "Oh, no, the winner is this one." And because of the brilliance of her intellect and the force of her personality, she was able to advocate very strongly for me, and we've had contiguous contact the entire time. Before I get that, and before I forget, that's Dr. Hansonia Caldwell, from whom you will hear in a second. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge I did not start this journey alone, establishing the African American Art Song Alliance. I had a graduate student at the University of Northern Iowa who walked this walk with me, helped me to establish the first chapter of the National Association of Negro Musicians in Iowa, and helped me with the establishing of the African American Art Song Alliance, and that is Joy Harrell. Stand up and be acknowledged, Joy. And now I give myself the hook and say, I've taken too much time. This is Dr. Hansonia Caldwell.
Thank you so much. It's a joy to be with you. Let me be sure this is on. Is it on? It's on. Okay, very good. Blessed are those who express the inexpressible through inspiration and occasional happy accident, for they shall be called artists. I had a happy artistic accident while preparing for this morning's program. I discovered that Eva Jesse was a poet. And I found this poem in the new collection, African American Poetry, 250 Years of Struggle and Song, edited by Kevin Young. You know how we get pigeonholed, and when I hear the name Eva Jesse, I think musician. Former director of music at Baltimore's Morgan State College, I think composer, and most significantly, I think conductor. Specifically, the choral conductor for Virgil Thompson's Four Saints, as well as choral conductor of the 1935 world premiere production of Porgy and Bess, an October event. Okay. I do not think poet, but I was wrong. Her poem for this morning is entitled The Singer, apparently published in her collection of spirituals in 1927. Please ignore the gender specificity. The poem is really an historical homage to all African American singers, specifically to the amazing ancestors on whose shoulders we all now stand. So, the singer. Because the singer's speech was blunt and manner plain, untaught in subtle phrases of the wise, because the years of slavery and pain ne'er dimmed the light of faith within the singer's eyes, because of ebony skin and humble pride, the world with hatred thrust the youth aside. But fragrance wafts through every trodden flower, and through our grief we rise to nobler things. Within the heart, in sorrow's darkest hour, a well of sweetness there unbidden springs. Despised of men, discarded and alone, the world of hatred claimed the singer as her own. She taught the singer truth that liberates the soul from bonds more galling than the slaver's chain. That human nature, lily-wise unfold, amid the mire of hatred void of stain. Thus, in the singer's humanity, clean, superbly strong, to the singer was born the priceless gift of song. The glory of the sun, the hush of morn, whisperings of treetop faintly stirred, the desert silence, wilderness forlorn, far once ocean depths, the tender lilt of bird, of hope, despair, the singer sang the melody, the endless theme of life's brief symphony. And nations marveled at the minstrel lad who swayed emotions as the singer's fancy led. With the singer they wept, were melancholy, sad. "'Tis but a cunning jest of fate," she said. They did not dream in selfish sphere apart. That song is but the essence of the heart. That song, the spiritual, the work song, and the blues, ragtime, jazz, gospel hymns, the repertoire that emerged from the musical practices of the African diaspora homeland, as well as the musical blending with vocal practices of other parts of the world, emerging, re-emerging as the essence of the heart. What a wonderful way to think of this conference. Eva Jessie calls us to recognize this as an experience with the essence of the heart. Much of what I would share with you today is already in the conference program. I would ask you to do several things, however. Number one, place your art and your artistry, your repertoire, within the evolution framework. Stage one, the root, right? The evolution of the sounds of the homeland, right? Stage two, 1440 to 1865, the time of dislocation of the diaspora, the evolution of communal culture, and the work of Generation One. Stage three, 1865 to 1925. 1865 to 1925. Dating is an issue. If you probably looked, you will find one set of dates for music. You'll find another set of dates for the arts. You'll find another for visual art. You'll find another set of dates for literature. You'll find another set of dates for political science, right? Just the dates that I use tend to be stronger in their connection to music with a connection to political science. So I'm saying stage 3, 1865 to 1925. That's the first emancipation and the work of generations 1 and 2, including migration that happens, the development of institution building across the country, right? Across the South and then up through the country. The commodification of communal and representative culture, right? The voice of African American singers, okay? Stage 4 is the 20th century, okay? I finally decided it was easier just to go 1900 to 2000, okay? Instead of trying to do all of the in-betweens. But there, the Harlem Renaissance and the Black Arts Movement are the two major things that happen within that framework. It is, with the Civil Rights Movement being called essentially the second emancipation, okay? This causes basically what I really was fascinated with this time as I looked at it was being sure to build within this evolution of the arts, also the evolution of technology. You just have to underscore that the voice wouldn't be where it was if essentially the recording industry hadn't been born, the film industry was born, the airplane was invented. The things that allowed us to go all over the world and take the voice with you happened all within the 20th century. At any rate, stage 5 then is 1990 till 2022, right? And that is now being called the Black Renaissance, and it is essentially the third emancipation is what it's called these days, okay? With the response to COVID being sort of woven into all of that, okay? The second thing I want you to do is to recognize in reviewing the generations list that is in your program book, okay? That listing is please recognize that there are an amazing number of trailblazing ancestors and legendary elders on whose shoulders you stand, and pioneering contemporaries working with you to form a future, to invent a future we never dreamed was possible. So that the third thing I want you to do is, and I'm inviting you to find a creative way to use the cultural calendar. I'm not sure if the calendar is...
It will be on the guidebook. I will upload it.
Okay. So one of the things I've been doing is developing a cultural calendar that is date specific, not just month specific, but date specific. And it's amazing the kinds of things that have gone on in each one of the months. And it started out being built as a list of the artistic birthdays. So essentially, October has extraordinary births, including Michael Abels' birthday this month, right? Then essentially I realized that I was sort of working in an artistic silo, right? And that there were such things as basketball players, etc. And people would be asking me for that information. And so I started a second historic birthdays of significance. And then the third thing I did was to add the arts events. And as I said to you, essentially, Porgy and Bess premiered in October. Okay? And so that when you think of this month, you think of Porgy and Bess and, what am I trying to say? The opera that's going to be on the 22nd. Omar, right? You believe that? You're going from Porgy and Bess to Omar. Thank you, Lord, right? So at any rate, what I wanted to invite, he's going to load the calendar into your computer, so you'll be able to look at it. And I invite you to find creative ways to use the cultural calendar. That could include creating a cultural legacy space in your life. For example, what do you think I did Tuesday, October 11th? Well, it happens that October 11th is our Nathaniel Dett's birthday, okay? And so I said, for my cultural legacy space for the day, let me listen to some R. Nathaniel Dett. And I turned to YouTube, and there were several renditions of his In the Bottoms suite available, and I was able to hear Leon Bates play the In the Bottoms suite. And then I was able to hear the R. Nathaniel Dett Chorale perform, and then I was able to hear, I believe it was the Morgan State Choir, perform the R. Nathaniel Dett Ave Maria, the song that every choir in the country should be singing, right? So that it just lifted my whole day. And then I went from listening to R. Nathaniel Dett to Art Blakey, right, whose birthday was also October the 11th, and I listened to some moaning, okay? And so that's the kind of thing that I would encourage you to do, to open the space in your life to keep the cultural legacy alive, essentially, okay? The final thing that I wanted you to be sure to do also, I'm hoping first off, I'm saying that I'm hoping that all of the information is shared with today's teachers, many of whom have said to me that they don't seem to get much teaching material, and they feel limited in the people that they can focus upon in their teaching. And so when you take a look at the calendar, you will find essentially every single day there will be someone that you can spotlight, okay? Finally, I also am calling upon you, okay, to document yourselves with your eye to the future. We who are historians, okay, love dates. We prefer dates. We want to know when you were born. We want to know what you're doing and when you are doing it, okay? And we really need that information. We also need you to begin thinking about where your materials are going to be. Which archive are you going to connect with? Because we want your lives to constantly be with us, okay? So please, most importantly, I would turn you to Paul Robeson. He told us that every artist, every scientist, every leader, every citizen must decide now where the person stands. There is no alternative. We are in a time, Lord knows, of contemporary urgency, okay, that cries out for answers, and some of those answers can be found in song. Okay? Most importantly, I close with the question, can we reconcile our society through music, through the arts? Please remember that voices matter, that songs matter, that what comes from your heart matters. Have a wonderful conference. Thank you. I'm with you.
Don't you just love her? I was just, how can you not love Hansonia Caldwell? she exudes excellence and light and goodness and exigency in everything that she does. She is an emeritus professor at Dominguez Hills, Cal State Dominguez Hills, and yet gets up and reads poetry to prepare for an assignment like this. I mean, and I know she dreads my phone calls because I said, you know, Hansonia, it's getting around that time. I'm going to need something from you. And says, oh, yes, Darryl. She never says, Darryl, I am retired. I am too busy. She says, yes, I'll have it to you on this day. And unlike some people, she mates her dates, and she gets those things right to me. So I really appreciate that. I've been asked to give you a little bit of orientation about the space. Many, though not all of the performances happen in this space, but there are a number of lectures and lecture recitals and other multimedia presentations that are happening in alternative spaces. And so I know that there are two major ones that you'll want to be oriented to. So 190, it's if you go out here, directly past the amphitheater, you'll see something that looks like it's straight out of the 60s. It's actually, it was out of the 60s. No, I don't think, no, I'm wrong, but I think it's, never mind. There's the AITR on this level. Those of you that have been to 196, you do not need to go for 190. You stay on this level for Max Jefferson's lecture. That will be out here and to the right. And for the Contemporary Arts Center, go out the doors and straight this way until you hit the T, and it's the large building that will say Contemporary Arts Center. There should be student volunteers that can help you with this. Go around the corner to the elevator, or you can take the stairs to the 3rd floor. And the colloquium room is in a little corner next to the costume annex, the school's costume annex. That will be particularly important tomorrow because we start at 8:15, and I don't want you disoriented. Say, listen, okay, so do your dry run today, find where CAC is, and you can do it at 5:30 when you have the opportunity for seeing Susheel Bibbs' wonderful presentation on the Hires Sisters. So, and if you have any questions, I know I look like my hair's on fire. That's actually what happened. My hair was on fire and it never came back. But you can always ask me, and I will take a minute, I'll pause, I'll take a breath, and then I'll tell you exactly where things are. But I do have student volunteers, not the least of which, not volunteering, is my TA for this, that it did such a Herculean effort, Emma Genzel. I don't know if she's in the hall, but I'd like for you to acknowledge her. There's Emma. Now just take a bow. Just take a bow. They're acknowledging you. That's all. Emma was my TA for last year, and I regrettably did not receive TA support over the summer. And I said, Emma, what am I going to do? I cannot wait until the end of September to get started with this. And so she interned with me over the summer. And she put all the effort into this. And so you could see, well, I have to acknowledge Emma. So thank you so much, Emma. All right, thank you. And other intern was Cassandra Leisure, who helped me with some other ancillary details. Okay, so without further ado, we will bring to the stage our keynote speaker, Dr. Marvin Curtis, Professor Emeritus and former Dean of University of Indiana, South Bend, Indiana University, South Bend. Thank you. You know, when people say Michigan, did you go to Michigan State? I said, bite your tongue. I'm from the University of Michigan. Okay, very good. So welcome, Marvin Curtis.
I haven't spoken yet, so but thank you. And Hansonia, you set me up, so thank you so much. I have to thank Darryl Taylor for the invitation, and I am so pleased to be here this morning to tell you about Lift Every Voice and why I stand. History is important, and while there have been a resurgence in the works of Black composers in recent years, there's a long way to go to erase the exclusion for centuries. This conference is a testimony to that. However, for 122 years, African Americans have proudly come to their feet when we hear the first 4 chords of Lift Every Voice and Sing. Whether it is the hymn version, now appearing in 43 denominational hymn books, or Roland Carter's classic choral arrangement, We Stand, But Why? As a junior member of the National Association of Negro Musicians, I learned to play, sing, and stand for Lift Every Voice and Sing. I gleaned some of the history of the brothers, James Weldon Johnson and John Rosamond Johnson, over the years. But unlike my studies of European and white American musicians, I knew nothing of their parents, education, or social background. With the assault on the rights of Black people under the past administration and the Supreme Court, the murder of George Floyd in front of our eyes, and the questioning by non-black folks as to why we stand because we have one national anthem, what made it appropriate that it was sung at the 2022 Super Bowl by Mary Mary, and yet Vanessa Williams was demonized by some folk on Twitter when she sang it during the PBS special A Capital Fourth on July 4th, 2021. For myself, the question, why do I stand, has a simple answer: history and respect. The roots of Lift Every Voice and Sing began with James Johnson, an African-American freeman born in Richmond, Virginia in 1830, and the birth of Helen Louise Diller, born of Haitian descent in Nassau, Bahamas in 1842. During Helen's formative years, she was educated in New York City's public school for colored children, whereby she was noted for her outstanding vocal talent. Sometime between Helen's 18th and 19th birthday, she gave a stellar concert one evening, and James Johnson happened to be in the audience. James, being a gentleman recognizing talent and genuine beauty, pursued Helen, and a romance began during the Civil War. Helen's mother, however, hearing a rumor that if the South won the war, all Northern people would become slaves, became frightened and moved her family back to Nassau, Bahamas. James Johnson followed, sailing to Nassau, Bahamas in search of Helen while gaining employment at the Royal Victoria Hotel, becoming head waiter. They were married on April 22nd, 1964, and James, being an entrepreneur, amassed great prosperity. However, in 1865, the Nassau economy collapsed at the end of the American Civil War, and a hurricane in 1866 destroyed much of the island. In the spring of 1869, James decided to return to New York with his wife and now infant daughter, Marie Louise. However, a conversation with American guests at the hotel, he decided to relocate to Jacksonville, Florida. Jacksonville was a primitive town compared to Nassau's high English standard of living, and during the first harsh winter, their daughter became ill and died the following June. A year later, on June 17, 1871, their son, James Weldon Johnson, was born, followed by their second son, John Rosamond Johnson, on August 11, 1873. It was the height of the era of Reconstruction in the United States. Reconstruction failed as both Southern and Northern states rolled back laws to ensure the freedom of Black people. White America embraced Thomas Dartmouth Rice's comic, clumsy, and dim-witted fictional caricature, Jim Crow, as how Black people behaved, and soon separate but equal became separate and unequal. By 1899, America had embraced Jim Crow segregation and enforced it with a reign of terror, using cross burnings and lynchings to intimidate Black citizens. Especially targeted were those who led acts of resistance against inequality in housing, travel, voting rights, and equal access to education. Between Reconstruction and World War II, over 4,075 African Americans were lynched in front of crowds of whites, many dressed in their finery and at picnics. Over 200 anti-lynching bills were introduced in Congress, with only 3 passing the House of Representatives, but none passing the United States Senate against this hideous act. Against this background, the brothers grew up in the now thriving city of Jacksonville, Florida. Their father, head waiter at the prestigious St. James Hotel, and their mother, teaching at the Stanton School for Colored Children, provided a middle-class environment for them. Graduating from Stanton, James attended Atlanta University, graduating with the opportunity to study medicine at Harvard on scholarship. During these times, he endured the Jim Crow laws of the South, particularly when it came to public transportation, as he rode the train between Jacksonville and Atlanta, Georgia. A summer student teaching assignment changed his direction when he was assigned to teach in rural Hampton, Georgia. Growing up middle class, he was now exposed to real poverty and segregation within this community. He wrote in his book, Along This Way, "I saw them hedged for centuries by prejudice, intolerance, and brutality, hobbled by their own ignorance, poverty, helplessness, yet notwithstanding, still brave and unvanquished. They themselves were not without hope. The patent proof of this was their ability to sing and laugh. Their knowledge of the white man's weakness, as well as his strength, came to be almost intuitive. And when they felt it futile to depend upon their own strength, they took advantage of his weaknesses, the blind side of arrogance, and the gullibility that always goes with overbearing pride." End of quote. And this is the important part for me. James Weldon Johnson chose to become an educator as he says, a means of living, not of making a living. Graduating from Atlanta University in 1894 and returning to Jacksonville as principal of the Stanton School. 2 years later, in 1896, he became the first African American to pass the Florida bar exam. Brother John attended Boston's New England Conservatory of Music, studying piano, organ composition, voice, and briefly, we think, working in London with Samuel Coleridge Taylor. He returned to Jacksonville in 1897 and became supervisor of music for the Stanton School. Their opera collaboration received attention of M. Whitmark and Sons Publishing Company, and in 1899 they headed to New York for the summer. There they met Oscar Hammerstein and African Americans Harry T. Burley, Will Marion Cook, Paul Laurence Dunbar, and Bob Cole. James fought against the minstrel coon show stereotype that permeated American culture. He sought to create an art form that embraced the importance of the American Negro's cultural background and his creative folk art. Returning from that summer in New York, James met with a group of 12 young men who decided to hold a February 12th celebration of Abraham Lincoln's birthday. Having had literary success, he was asked to participate. He said, and I quote, "My thoughts began buzzing around a central idea of writing a poem on Lincoln. But my central idea, however, took on another form. I talked it over with my brother, the thought I had in my mind, and we planned to write a song to be sung as part of the exercises. We planned, better still, to have it sung by the school children, a chorus of 500 voices. I got my first line, lift every voice and sing. Not a startling line, but I worked along grinding out the next 5. As his creativity began to flow, his brother worked at his musical setting while James paced back and forth, going through all the agony and ecstasy of creating. By the time he had finished the third verse, God of our weary years, he could not keep back the tears. He had experienced that sense of serene joy, which makes artistic creation the most complete of all human experiences. The brothers did not see Lift Every Voice and Sing having impact. However, those 500 African-American school children and the community embraced it. Later published by Edward Marks, it became a familiar song in African-American churches and households, appearing in the backs of hymn books and in other ceremonies. The musical structure of the song reflects the classical training of John Rosamond Johnson. The words reflect the separation of black people from the mainstream. Amani Perry, in her book, May We Forever Stand, A History of the Black National Anthem, describes the musical essence. Musically, the song reflects how black people were part of the West and yet excluded from so many parts of the life worlds of the West. Rosamond wrote in a major key, but he shifts to a minor key towards the end of each verse, moving the spirit from high to low, from hope to despair. Rosamond paired sadness with triumph and resilience. The highest notes of lift are found in the words rise, beat, and might, giving again the sensibility of a march. The break that begins in the first verse with sing a song has one word for one beat. James's use of stress in the break of each verse, sing a song, we have come, also suggests a march, literally, if not sonotically. It gives a sense of moving in lockstep also marching forward. Also, as Jay Rosamond was classically trained, it is worthwhile to note that this one beat, one word form is reminiscent of an operatic recitative. In making that section speech-like, the song moves from sounding like an anthem to feeling like a mantra. It then finishes with an extended note on the third to the last line of each stanza, us, slaughtered, and thee, in reference to God. 20th century African Americans fought Jim Crow laws and negative depictions in popular culture while desiring to become a more vibrant part of American society. In 1909, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People was founded. Between 1910 and 1930, 1.6 million African Americans moved from the rural South to cities in the Midwest and the North, and they knew the song. Many new African American political, business, and social societies began, and it was the National Negro Business League Conference, hosted by Booker T. Washington, where the Williams and Walker Glee Club performed the work and unofficially called it the Negro National Anthem. James Weldon not only used his intellectual and artistic endeavors, but he used his political acumen to his knowledge of Spanish to serve President Theodore Roosevelt as a diplomat to Venezuela and Nicaragua. He anonymously published in his famous work, The Autobiography of an Ex-Colored Man, and penned editorials for the magazine The Century, gained the attention of the NAACP, and accepting the appointment of field secretary in 1916. During the next 3 years, the NAACP's 68 northern chapters expanded to the southern part of the United States, growing to 131 chapters. In 1918, James went to Memphis, Tennessee, after the public burning to death of L. Persons, a local African-American accused of being an axe murderer with no proof. James Weldon Johnson saw a pile of ashes and pieces of charred wood still marking the spot. Bones had been scrambled for souvenirs by the masses. 5,000 men and women stood and watched L as L was baptized with gasoline and set on fire. 5,000. The mob dispersed, many of them complaining they burned him too fast. As James Weldon Johnson wrote, I tried to balance the suffering of this miserable victim against the moral degradation of Memphis, and the truth flashed over me that in large measure, the race question involved the saving of Black America's body and white America's soul. In 1919, James Weldon Johnson was appointed Executive Secretary of the NAACP, and Lift Every Voice and Sing was adopted as the NAACP's official song, receiving the official title, the Negro National Anthem. James Weldon Johnson spent the next 10 years advocating against lynching, racism, and segregation in America. John, his brother, was best known for his works on Negro spirituals, jubilees, plantation ballads, and minstrel songs. Over his lifetime, John arranged more than 150 spirituals and over 160 musical theater numbers. His career was not limited to songwriting, however. He was a renowned performer and made his acting debut in the first African-American show on Broadway, Oriental America, in 1897. He eventually secured the role of the lawyer in Porgy and Bess. And in 1935, Mamba's Daughters, in 1939, and he was in the 1940 production of Cabin in the Sky. One of his major accomplishments was among the founders of the New York Music School Settlement for Colored People in Harlem in 1911. The school housed the Music School Choral Society, the Music School Settlement Glee Club, and the New Amsterdam Orchestra. These groups and several soloists, vocal and instrumental, took part in a Carnegie Hall concert in April of 1915. African American churches, civic societies, and educators used their segregated school systems and meetings to teach the culture and artistic genius of the African and African American people, singing Lift Every Voice and Sing during worship services, plays, and pageants. The National Association of Negro Musicians, established in 1919, continues to sing it to open all meetings. There, of course, were detractors against the composition, including many white sociologists who called it nationalistic and therefore dangerous. Some African Americans saw the song and its community-given title, the Negro National Anthem, as a threat to their gaining acceptance by white society. James Weldon Johnson disagreed and wrote, "There is nothing in Lift Every Voice and Sing to conflict with the slightest degree with the use of the Star-Spangled Banner or America, My Country 'Tis of Thee, or other patriotic songs. It fully is patriotic. Among possibilities are that it may grow in general use among whites as well as colored Americans. The music of My Country 'Tis of Thee is that of a British national anthem. Music of the Star-Spangled Banner is derived from old foreign drinking songs, difficult to sing. In addition, the sentiments are boastful and bloodthirsty. Words of Lift Every Voice and Sing are more elevated in spirit. I do not hesitate to say that my brother's music is better than either of these imported songs." I like that. James Weldon Johnson died in 1938 and James Rosamond Johnson in 1954. Desegregation in the 50s and 60s resulted in African-American public school teachers being replaced by non-African American teachers, many unfamiliar with the song or the history and culture of Africans and African Americans. Yet, it continues to be sung and remains a song of faith, hope, and resolve. The battle cry against the injustices perpetuated upon African Americans for over 400 years. Therefore, when it is sung, I stand for the 20 million Africans captured and brought to America during the slave trade. I stand for the 4,000 African Americans unjustly lynched for this country, in this country. I stand for Rosa Parks, Fannie Lou Hamer, Shirley Chisholm, Medgar Evers, John Lewis, Elijah Cummings, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and those who led the struggle for freedom. I stand for Harry T. Moore, James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, Michael Schwerner, Emmett Till, the 4 little girls in Birmingham who died in the bombing of their church, Trayvon Martin, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and all the martyrs of the Civil Rights Movement. I stand for Ruby Bridges, James Meredith, the Little Rock Nine, and all of those who helped desegregate public schools and universities. I stand for Jesse Owens, Hank Aaron, Jackie Robinson, Althea Gibson, Arthur Ashe, Serena and Venus Williams, Simone Biles, and those athletes who have broken the color barrier. I stand for Blind Tom, Sister Retta Jones, James Reese Europe, Roland Hayes, William Warfield, Camellia Williams, Marion Anderson, Jesse Norman, Leontine Price, William Grant Still, William Dawson, Clarence Cameron White, Betty Jackson King, Paul Lawrence Dunbar, Alvin Ailey, Arthur Mitchell, Willis Patterson, Langston Hughes, George Shirley, Jacob Lawrence, Gordon Parks, Augusta Savage, Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, and those musicians, artists, and authors who use art to tell our story. I stand for Dr. Charles Drew, George Washington Carver, Katherine Johnson, Dr. Mary Daly, Dr. Warren Washington, Bessie Griffin, Alan Armitage, and Dr. Nolan Hilton, and all who have made contributions to mankind through science, technology, and STEM. I stand for the work of then Senator Kamala Harris and Cory Booker that got the United States Senate to unanimously pass legislation making lynching a federal hate crime, and finally having the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act signed into law on March 29, 2022 by President Joe Biden. I stand for my parents, my grandparents, and those who came before me, whose sacrifice and struggle enabled me to have a better life. No law can change the heart of stone, and no legislation can erase the pain African Americans feel for those men, women, and children who lost their lives on a rope slung over a tree by those who saw and continue to see racial equity as a threat to their own security. The singing of Lift Every Voice and Sing should never be frivolous. The song represents the struggle and the history of African Americans in an America that must examine her conscience and find value and respect in the lives of all of her citizens. This is our history. This is our challenge. And this is why I stand and we stand when we sing, Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Are we not an assembly of singers? Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Thank you very much. My Lord. Well, move on we must. It's difficult when you have that sort of reflection on so much importance. Thank you so much, Marvin, for that moving history that I think few of us knew so much about, that reflection and the power of when we look at the totality of our love for this country, in spite of, not because of, but in spite of the way that our country has oftentimes treated us. We do this because we love what we do, right? And we not because we're waiting for acknowledgement or fame. But we're going to acknowledge some people right now. As part of our acknowledgement of excellence in the past 5 years, our acknowledgement is not only a congratulations for the excellence of what people have done, are doing, and their plans for doing, but it is a huge opportunity for us to say thank you. Thank you is an important phrase, perhaps the most important phrase we all know. Those of us that travel, what's the first thing you learn in any language? You learn how to say thank you. It's more important than where's the toilet. You learn how to say thank you, because that opens a lot of doors for you, yeah? And because it's what we should do. And so, without hesitation now, we're going to And before I forget, because I don't want to linger, but I must acknowledge our sponsors, the people that have given, my big thank you to them, the people that have made it possible for us to give awards, the people that have made it possible for us to have a comfortable transportation, the people that have made it possible for us to have refreshments. Mind you, be knowledgeable that there are refreshments and they are paid for, so please eat them. And so you will each morning have refreshments, and then every afternoon you'll have a refreshing of the refreshments. Tomorrow morning, your morning refreshments will be in the CAC. It will not be here, and it will be in the CAC as you exit the elevator into the hallway in the education outreach room. Yeah, there will be a sign there. You'll see food. It's for you. Please do take advantage of that. That's provided by the African American Studies here at UCI. I have to say thank you to the National Association of Teachers of Singing. Alan Henderson reached out to me and said, how can I help? What can we do? And so he was able to fund our 2 master classes, one today by the inestimable, my sister and my colleague and friend, Louise Toppin, and who I knew before y'all knew her, except for Dean Patterson. And Dean Patterson knew her first. And by Benita Hyman on tomorrow, from the Metropolitan Opera and La Scala and Berlin, and she's just magnificent. And you're gonna hear her today. Boy, are you in for a treat! And that concert today, fire. Fire, 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 all of it fire. The Hamsong Foundation, Thomas Hampson reached out to me before the last conference in 2017, said, how can I help? So often this is how it has come. How can I help? It's kind of saying, sir, you could have applied for some funds here. Why didn't you? And how can I help? And so the live streaming that is available that gives access to the world in a way that, 20 years ago was not possible, is possible. And the recording, the archiving of those things which people access innumerably. They are able to grow in a way that perusing scores would not be allowable, or finding scores in libraries, or that the fact that those videos are online and something that somebody can reflect on. It's made possible because of the generosity of the Hamsong Foundation, so I want you to thank them. The Flora Family Foundation, I happened to have been scrolling through my Facebook messages. There was one that was buried deep because it wasn't a Facebook friend. Said, there's a message here. And oftentimes we all know, who's this trying to reach out to me? I don't know. And I clicked on it, and boy, am I glad I did. And they reached out and said, how can we help? We want to help you. The Office of Inclusive Excellence here at UCI, the Chancellor's Office for the Illuminations funding, the Dean's Office here at the Claire Trevor School of the Arts. My colleague and friend Nicole Grimes gave from the Chair's Endowment for the Music Department, and the National Association of Negro Musicians, Western Region, all offered and said, how can we help? So thank you, thank you, thank you. And if I can also thank Louise Toppin for her fiduciary support from Videmus. So thank you very much, Louise. So we shroud these awards in mystery. We say we don't want anyone to know. Why? Because it could be you. It's possible. Most people that come in here, Louise will tell you, say, I had no idea. Louise was on my advisory council and did not know that she was receiving an award. But I didn't do it by myself. I just talked to the rest of the advisory council and said, what do you think about this? And so we will give awards in 3 categories. The Willis Patterson Research Award, and I'm going to ask Willis Patterson and Susheel Bibbs to join me on the stage. And that will be followed by the George Shirley Performance Award, and followed by the Adams-Owens Composition Prize, awarded in the name of posthumously Robert Owens and H. Leslie Adams. Yes, thank you very much. Isn't it a blessing? So Susheel Bibbs, the inaugural winner of the Willis Patterson Award, will award to the winners for this year.
Okay. We got it. All right, thank you so much. You know, it's not about me. It's about those shoulders that we stand on. And I really mean this when I say that out of 26 awards for my films, and it was this award that meant the most. And the reason is that without the research, nothing happens. And so with that acknowledgement, you know, you're digging and you don't even notice that people notice. And so you're digging, and then suddenly someone says, hey, I saw that. And so, believe me, that is the most treasured of the awards. Thank you. Thank you. And so now we're going to award 2. The first to Dr. Hansonia Caldwell. Now you heard her, and go ahead, okay. You heard her, and you know why. Academic specialties in African American music, history, piano, choral conducting. Those of you who are at Dominguez know the Jubilee Singers, the chorus. And then they say humanities, but no, it's research, an educator's resource manual for African American music, a chronology from 1619 to 1995, and the list goes on. We are so honored to present this. I knew her in college, and we called her Sonia. But to Dr. Hansonia Caldwell.
Indeed.
I just love, what a wonderful way to start the day, just thank you. Really, this conference has meant a great deal to me, to know that the work, in a way, I think of it in relationship to Willis. Because one of the first conferences that I gave a major talk at was at University of Michigan, when that wonderful, was it 1986 conference? 85? Yeah. And everybody who was anybody in African American music was at that conference. And I had the thrill of moderating a panel with Eva Jesse, Jester Hairston, and from Virginia, Undine Smith Moore. Can you imagine? Can you just imagine just to be in awe? So I have constantly, I'm from Baltimore, okay? So that means that I'm from the city that has a Dunbar High School, a Douglas High School. My mother taught at Phyllis Wheatley Elementary School. You know, the concept of African American history is just part of my blood. Thank you so much. Thank you.
The second research award, Willis Patterson Research Award, goes to Randy Jones. Now, well earned and well deserved. We don't see Randy here right now, but she will receive it. And just let me speak a minute, just a second, about Randy. Specializing in research and performance of Negro spirituals and art songs or concert spirituals composed for the solo vocalist. She has done amazing works with the Spirituals database. I know many of you have used that. The Afrocentric voices in classical music, the art of the Negro spiritual that then delves into the music itself. I just want to say we honor her, we thank, and we are grateful to her. Randy Jones.
Thank you, sir. We'll bring to the stage Dr. Louise Toppin, the inaugural winner of the George Shirley Award in Performance.
Thank you. It is indeed an honor to be here. George Shirley is not with us today because he is doing what he's been doing so much for the last 50, 60 years. He's performing. And so I am honored to have been the recipient of his award. As Susheel so well said, it's not about us, it's about the legacy that we are a part of. Darryl and I are two of the students that studied with him at University of Michigan, and we were mentored by Willis Patterson. So this is always such a special moment for me and for both of us, I think, being a part of the Alliance. When I think about George Shirley, I not only think about excellence in terms of his artistry, I think of his educational, his work as a teacher, I think of his inspiration, but sometimes people don't know that he's also had a lot to do with activism in terms of encouraging the next generation of musicians. He's been pushing the Detroit schools for years to bring music back because he recognizes that without that lineage, our music stops, all music stops. And so the recipients of these, the two recipients of this year's awards very much exemplify all that George Shirley exemplifies. The first, they need, when I say their names, you'll know exactly why. They need no introduction, but I still will give them. Both of these artists are on the operatic stage, and they are also not with us today for that reason. They're out performing, but these two baritones have exemplified not only their excellence and beauty in traditional opera, but the first one, which is Will Liverman. Will has taken on some of the most important roles of our generation, taking on the roles in Fire Shot Up in My Bones, the first opera by the Metropolitan Opera by a black composer. He goes down in the history book with that one, but also his work at St. Louis Opera, singing Highway 1. So he's singing with major companies, not only traditional operatic repertoire, but he's really embraced African American repertoire and is doing a brilliant job. His CD, I was getting ready to say it. I'm his big sister. He thinks just because I don't have notes, I'm gonna forget. But that's where I was going, is that he is the first African American to have a Grammy nomination for a CD, all of African American music, and that's a huge step. But he has also reflected the humanity, as I said, for George Shirley. He has been a judge just behind the scenes for the George Shirley competition. He has said, how can I actively help? How can I encourage the next generation of singers? So even while his career is still in its meteoric rise, he's looking behind him and saying, how do I help? That's who George Shirley was, and that's who Will Liverman is. So we are thrilled to award the first award to Will. And oh, that's right, he did get one. And he's a composer arranger as well, because one of his compositions is even on that CD. But he also has worked with a lot of our young composers of this day. Shawn Okpebholo, who's going to present after me, the wonderful song set is on that Grammy-nominated CD. The second recipient, and both of these are wonderful human beings. Anytime I've called and said, can you, they start saying yes before I've even gotten it out of my mouth, because they know I'm only calling to ask about, can you help somebody else? It's not about anything I'm doing, it's about, can you help on the next level? The next person very much exemplifies this. His name is Kenneth Overton. Of course. Sorry, we had a little inside joke. Kenneth has responded in so many ways. As you've seen, he's been doing, again, the traditional opera route, but he's also taken on so much during the pandemic, creating conversations about African American music and about African American life that are important online conversations. And so pivoting quickly to find a way to continue your artistry even when the industry is closed down, but also to help your people. He is one who approached me about, he said, can I give some awards to the George Shirley vocal competition? So he called me and asked if he could do that, and starting year before last, we awarded the first 2 prizes for contemporary African American art song and contemporary African American spiritual. He gave us 2 prizes. And so that's who he is. And then he called Karen Slack and said, Karen, you need to give them an award. So this past year, we also had a Karen Slack Award. So again, it's passing forward. He said, I like what you're doing with your mission here. I want to give, and I want to encourage others to give. He's also working with a new competition with Manhattan School of Music, so his reach is continuing in many areas. He's doing world premieres of works by African American composers, and he's staying connected to the community that has nurtured him, and he's always writing blogs that we see that talk about his journey, and these are important for young singers coming up behind him. So I say thank you to you for your attention and your time, and congratulations to Will and Kenneth.
Isn't she just brilliant? I mean, just brilliant. Coming to the stage, no less brilliant, is the great composer, Shawn Oak Pegballo, an inaugural winner of this prize.
I will say, though, the prizes weren't that big last time, so I may exchange mine. So I will say
it was more important last time.
right. I will say 5 years ago was the first time I came to the African American Art Song Alliance conference, and thanks to Darryl's work, that did so much for my career, not as necessarily a composer, even though it did, but just being around so many people that look like me, that are doing things like me, because I didn't engage in necessarily black classical composers until this conference, and it's so important. Now it's all I do because we're more fun to be around, right? So thank you for that. So again, your work, more than you know, is doing a lot for our community. So, yeah. So this first person, a pianist, a composer, an arranger, and not only does this person have degrees from, Juilliard, Howard, and Columbia, she is perhaps the most diverse composer of concert spirituals and art song, mixing many different genres, both popular and classical. This year's award goes to Miss Jacqueline Hairston. Yeah, and unfortunately she can't be with us. This next person I actually met for the first time 5 years ago at this conference, and we've become really good friends, brothers. A vocalist, arranger, composer, pianist, Emmy-nominated composer, and I just have to say this about this person who knows now who he is. I try to not arrange or reimagine any spirituals that this person has done because I'm scared of the competition, because he's such a great composer. So thrilled and honored to award this to my friend Dave Ragland.
Say a speech, I have to say something. Okay. All right, okay.
You can do whatever works for you.
Well, I would just, first, thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Thank you, African American Art Song Alliance. I received an award from Willis Patterson. That's the award all by itself right there. I'm done. I can go home. And thank you to my brother, Dr. Grammy-nominated Shawn Okpebholo for the honor, and thank you for the kind words. Thank you so much. I just want to say, just real briefly, I'm a fan of everyone in this room. I'm grateful to be here, and I had no idea in 2010 when I was going over Phi Mu Alpha, and my DP, Dean of Pledges, or FEO, said, hey, we want you to arrange something for us. And it's like, I don't do that anymore. I'm done. And that launched pretty much the beginning of my journey. So you never know where God's going to take you, and I'm just grateful and humbled and honored to be here on this stage. And it's just humility. I think it's just the key. And I love what I do. I wake up every morning like, Lord, it's a hustle, there's a grind, but I'm so grateful for the opportunity just to create something that someone somewhere in the world is gonna sing and perform and just be encouraged by. So thank you all again so much for this honor. It's greatly appreciated.
I predict, and I'm fairly sure in this prediction, that his song, I believe, will be sung by everybody. It will be standard repertoire. Everybody should sing, I believe, or at least should know it, and it's available in multiple keys, so there's no reason why you wouldn't. but really, really astonishing. I also believe you would appreciate a break before the next session, and so thank you very much. We'll bring this session to close. Shawn, would you? Yeah, because he's in Chicago. Yeah. I just if that. Yours is no one else will be announced as the inaugural winner of that award. That's the bigger part of that.
What are we doing now? I was like, okay. No, I'm just kidding. All right.
Hopefully that's correct. If not, maybe
We'll just put a piano out.
You can, there's one there.
move the... The downstage of the pianos, we're gonna go.
like is the one with the hook. Come on. Okay. So this one has a plug. We're going to do the socket in here. And it's, you can see this one has a little protruding section in here. And you can, let me have it. So we're going to, this is the way I want to run it. I'm going to run it down this way.
Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. Okay. Testing 1, 2, 3. Hello.
Session. Hello, everybody, again. I'm Barbara Hill-Moore, and I'm thrilled to be here, especially in this moment, for this wonderful session, Creating Omar for Los Angeles Opera. And I hope you won't be disappointed if I don't give a lengthy discussion about these very distinguished guests for this afternoon. I will just begin by saying we are pleased to have Christopher Koelsch, General Director of LA Opera, Michael Abels, Christopher Myers, and young people from the Los Angeles Young Artists Program with us this afternoon, this late morning. It feels like night to me. This late morning, we welcome them. Thank you.
morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. It's a real privilege to be with you this morning. And I really want to thank my fellow panelists here. We are in the crux of development of this production at the moment, and so I'm just really, really grateful for you guys taking the time this morning to be able to talk about the creative process. Can people hear me? We're good? No. I could be louder. Okay, great. That doesn't come naturally, so I'm going to try to scream. We have about an hour, which is insufficient time to cover the depth and breadth of this particular work of art, but I thought that given the people that we have on the panel and given where we are in the process, I thought it would actually be most useful if we could actually walk through the process of creativity, and through that, the lens of why this particular story, why now, and I think of particular interest to this community is really about the creative process of building something that did not exist a couple of years ago. So I will start with the esteemed Michael Abels with the question of, and asking you in some ways to speak both on behalf of you and Rhiannon. We obviously have a very, very unusual situation, and it is not unprecedented, but certainly anomalous to have an opera written by two composers. So actually, if you could just talk about the process with Rhiannon when this project first came to you, how that actually worked. Yeah, I'll start there.
Hey, good morning. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having us. So Omar is an opera by Rhiannon Giddens and myself, and it was commissioned by Spoleto USA, which is based in Charleston. And they approached Rhiannon about to do this work, and normally or traditionally it would be there would be a composer and a librettist. And so I believe Spoleto said to Rhiannon, and we'll find you a librettist, or who would you be interested in working with? But Rhiannon, and if you don't know her work, please do yourself a favor and just Google any single piece of hers and you will be an instant fan. She's an incredible MacArthur Genius winning, Grammy winning, singer-songwriter, yes, singer-songwriter, banjo player, fiddle player. It's extraordinary, the amount of talents that she brings. Anyway, so she said because she is a singer-songwriter and because part of her work is recovering our history and using her work to tell our stories, she said, no, I think I'll write the libretto. What I really like is someone to collaborate with on the music. And fortunately, Spoleto was understanding of her way of wanting to approach it. So she asked me, do you want to write an opera together? And before she finished the sentence, I said yes, because it had been my dream to write an opera for years and years. And so the story is about Omar ibn Said, who was a Senegalese Muslim who was kidnapped in 1806 or 7 and brought on the Middle Passage to the Carolinas and enslaved. And but he was kidnapped at the age of 37. He could read and write Arabic. He was literate, and so when that was discovered, it was of great interest to his captors, and they were determined to. On the one hand, were amazed and respectful of this, but they also were determined to convert him to Christianity, because So the irony of that, makes a great subject for opera. But also the fact that his story is not well known, and yet his autobiography is in the Library of Congress as one of the only first-person slave narratives. And so the opera celebrates and hopefully is a testament to his perseverance and the power of faith to transcend physical tragedy and confines and restriction. No, but the question was about the creative process. So Rhiannon, she asked me to collaborate, and I was just about what Rhiannon has all these gifts, and what is it that she needs to have her gifts be seen and heard in an operatic space. And that was how I approached my job. It's like, my job is to figure out the distance between here and there, and then bring us there. And we talked early on about what we thought opera should look like and sound like. And it turned out that we had a shared vision, just from, she, of course, people don't know that she's also a classically trained opera singer. Yeah, among her many other talents, there's that. She actually was in her first production of Porgy last year. So in her spare time, you can ask her how she does all that, because I don't know. Where was it? Oh yeah, so we both had a vision of what an opera should look like and sound like, and that was a shared vision. And among the things were just that through her composition, art comes through her voice. And she naturally writes immensely singable vocal lines. And I've always felt like I grew up singing in church and in choir, and that's how I write. I'm at home by myself when I'm writing orchestral music, I'm singing the parts. So we agreed on that. And then we also agreed quickly that we didn't really want to rely on a lot of instruments that are found outside the orchestra. Like the first thing was, there'll be a banjo, you would assume, and then there'll be a kora and things. But we decided, no, we really want it to be. I mean, there's some hand drumming in the score, but that's not that unusual. We wanted it to be an orchestral palette, and the reason is because in telling Omar's story, there's this huge opportunity to incorporate nearly every style of American music that has been influenced by and or just invented by black people. And we couldn't possibly fit all of them, but we fit all the ones that were appropriate to the story. And so in doing that and being very diverse in our influences, it helps to have the palette is what unifies it, and what gets people to understand that the sonic palette, that yes, it may sound like this and it may sound like that in different scenes, but it is in fact all one work, and it's an opera, not a musical or whatever other way you might label it. So I'm getting around to his question by the end of all this. The question was creative process. So Rhiannon creates very much through her voice and in a way that at least sounds very spontaneous. She wrote the libretto first, and she really wrote most of that before writing the music, even though I'm sure some of the music occurred to her. But she would write fractions of the music as she was writing the libretto, and then she would send me recordings, and I would begin by transcribing them, and then I would hear, and she has a great way of creating character with her voice. So I could hear, even though I had the text, I could hear all the characters and what their emotions were just in the way she was singing. And so then I would use that and kind of cast it in an operatic context. And that mostly, I think, involves harmony, because there are things that opera is that folk song isn't always. And it's important, I think, in opera that the orchestra is not just accompanying, but is an active part of creating the art. So it goes beyond what orchestration might be if you're doing some other genre. But there you go. There's the answer. Now I can leave the stage and just be quiet.
You're not off the hook yet. I think one of the most interesting things about this process for me is that issue of collaboration, because in a way, I think you guys would maybe agree with this, that all successful opera is operating on multiple levels simultaneously. But I think particularly in Omar, there's this immediacy of character that you described of Rhiannon delivering, and then there's this incredibly complex, rich text that lives below that vocal line. And so I think one of the most interesting things for me, it's the first opera I think that I've ever heard which felt both instantaneously accessible, it's very ingratiating to the audience, and required a real sense of study that all great opera does, that you felt like you were just beginning to scratch the surface of the complexity of this work of art. And so I'm actually I'm wondering about that process. How iterative was it between you and Rhiannon in discussing that? Was that what you actually set out to do? And then was she kind of taken aback by the depth of the music that you were delivering back to her based on this blueprint? I do think, I can't put my hand in fire, but I do think this is probably the first opera that's ever been composed on a banjo. There's just a sense of immediacy there that you were both able to retain, but also make significantly more complex. And when we get into the rest of the team, I think that gave a very rich text for the creators.
Well, thanks. I don't know how to answer that. I mean, we were wanting it to operate on multiple levels, and you can't. I felt like you can't. That was an intention. I didn't know. I don't know. I hope we succeeded, but because that was the intention, I feel we were both trying to go in the same direction. So there was surprisingly little that we disagreed on when she would do something and I would do something, and then most of it was like the first pass of how it came out. So.
One more.
Okay.
Sorry. One of the things that I have found so impressive about you as a composer is that you write extraordinarily beautiful music that you're kind of unsentimental about. And I think because you're doing all of this work in film, you're kind of used to being part of a overall creative process. And so were there things that in the process you jettisoned or had to fight for in trying to meld your two visions?
Yeah, there was one thing that she wanted to do that I was convinced was not right, and I was very demonstrative about saying we need to do this a different way, and she listened to me. And then there was a part that I had done that she didn't, and I had actually written lyrics for, and she was not feeling it, so that didn't happen. And then sometimes, either one of us would suggest, and those ideas were very well received, and the part that she didn't like the lyrics for, I saw what the libretto was, and I redid that music to use that libretto, and then it worked like a charm. So, yeah, but those are, considering that it's an entire work, there's really very little disagreement, and when you look back on it, it's really surprising, and I don't know how that happened, but I just think it came out of the spirit of wanting, like I said, the vision is there, and we're both going that direction. So.
Okay, sorry, one more. Sorry, but we have you, so.
Hi. Good to see you.
I think one of the most challenging things about giving birth to a completely new work of art on this scale is there's no amount of, there are no previews, there's, the workshopping process can be inadequate to the task of the scale of the endeavor. So the last question for this section is, what did you learn about the piece going through the process in Charleston and in performance? And did you make any changes subsequent to that process?
We didn't make any real changes to the pace or there are no new arias or new material. It's really the same work. And that's surprising to me. I had thought that I had already, prepared, and this is the time that we work on Omar, after the premiere, but it seemed to work. And I had concerns about different things, but those seem to be borne out in the finished product. And mostly it's about things that may change our balances. There are the hall in Spoleto could not be more different than Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. That's which they could tell you another entire hour about, I'm sure. So some of the orchestration Spoleto, very small room, very live orchestra pit, having to cross out many things. A young orchestra, LA, those things are all different. Well, except it's very live, so I'm told, but we've yet to hear it in the pit. You know, that's only in the last week. So I'm there ready with the pencil, but you don't get to hear it until the week and figure out which things work. But at least from Spoleto, now I know that section right there is probably going to be a problem. You know, so I have this list of things to check out. But my sense is not as many things will need to be omitted from the orchestration as were in Spoleto. But also, you know, in orchestral music, it's much easier to cross out than it is to add. Adding is really hard. So I always tend to write scores with the understanding that, yeah, this probably won't, you know, I'll probably cross this part out. So that's part of my process anyway.
So the score is written and it moves to Kaneza and Christopher for a very different kind of process. Can you talk about that process, which in this case was extremely accelerated? And I think I have a particular interest in the adaptation of material that could be so potentially provocative and triggering for people, such sensitive material, how you thought about placing the horrors of this story in context of delivery as a piece of theater. I don't know if it's easier to...
Immediately when we received the score from Spoleto, and there were some workshop recordings of the music, the thing that I thought about first and that Christopher and I started from was this sense of, in telling Omar's story, we're really thinking about the contest of languages in his life, and that those are cultural languages, those are spiritual languages, those are spoken languages, written languages, and they're languages of material and languages of place and languages of sound. And so the question in telling Omar's story becomes, how do we tell that trajectory of ultimately this man holding all of those things at the same time? And that in many ways, that is a way to think about, as Christopher speaks about, this hyphen of African American and the writing of this originate hyphen and this holding of many things at the same time. And how do we understand our telling of Omar's story to be that? And that we're telling his spiritual journey in many ways. God knows we've seen enough slavery rags in our cinemas and on our stages and everywhere else, inaccurate depictions of a time period. We have seen this. We do not need to see this. This is not even necessarily a way to certainly address the glorious music and score that we received, but also to really think about the unique horrors that have played out in the United States in particular, and I would differentiate that from even the Caribbean and colonialism in, around the world. So one of the things we thought about early on in terms of what does it mean to take on the horror with our focus on the spiritual journey is thinking about that slavery existed before people were torn out of their homes in West Africa and forced at gunpoint around the world. People often talk about the corporal extremeness that has played out in the United States, but the perversity and specificity of American slavery around the naming of a permanent condition attached to the body was unique and is a kind of perverted violence that certainly continues to affect us today. And how to hold in our storytelling that. How do we hold understanding of this institution of language and that we hold ourselves accountable to the magnitude of that violence in our storytelling, which is not about seeing, there's a scene of an auction in our opera. It's not about seeing people ripped off the stage or people in chains, but how do we hold the violence of that institution as we tell the story? And I think that was kind of the differentiation for me. not watching the violence of this story play out on bodies, but how do we really hold this larger lens of how this institution has affected all of us, and invest in the telling of this spiritual journey of this man.
To piggyback on top of what Kaneza is saying, there is this central thought about the contest of languages, and it starts in the libretto, it starts in the score, it starts in the call to prayer. So this man was a Muslim man who was educated in Islam in West Africa before he came to the States. And Michael and Rhiannon bring in all of that influence. If you listen, bring in those vocabularies. And there is absolutely this contest of languages that we really wanted to center on in the work. So we see that in terms of the design. I made about 40 different fabrics that are his actual words, his writing, which is, we have this like letter from the past to us today from a brother that many years ago. And then in thinking about opera as a whole, to think about the idea that this is a contest of languages that is often put on us today. And to think of, people want to think about these languages as oppositional. They want to think of, there's African-American cultural production, there is opera, there is all of these kind of strains of thought, and somehow these are all oppositional. But for everybody on this stage, and for everybody who's devoted to this work and to the work that we have all been doing, that's the key. Is that it's not oppositional for us, right? It's something, these are all languages that we speak fluently and across the board, just as Omar spoke Christianity and Islam and the languages that he grew up with. Just as this is something we've been doing for generations, speaking all of these languages equally and to each other. And so when we think about opera, so often people have asked us in thinking about this opera, like, hey, so this is opera, and they put the quotes around it, and how was it to work on an opera? And, if they knew their history, if they knew what we know, this is, Dvorak and Harry T. Burleigh. This is back in the day. We've been talking to this form forever. And it's exciting to be amongst a community of people who are as comfortable and as thick in speaking all of these languages, theatrical languages, musical languages, languages of voice that tear me up. And to see it not as oppositional, but in fact as building on a long tradition of people who have always been multilingual.
Jamez, bringing you into the conversation about the responsibility of embodying all of these ideas of Michael and Rhiannon and Christopher and Kaneza. There is an enormous interpretive and artistic burden that is placed on your shoulders. You are rarely off the stage, and you are embodying the spirit of this lost titan. You're bringing this story forward. Can you talk about what that journey has been like for you as an artist?
Well, first off, like most people who began working on this project, except for like maybe the administration at the Spoleto Festival, I didn't know anything about Omar at all, because it's not a history that's taught. It's like I've said a few times before, it's a history that you have to go out and look for, unfortunately. And so I went on a journey of just diving deep into the history of where he was from, what was happening during the time period, what exactly happened during the slave trade. 'Cause, we get an abbreviated version when we're in school, which is also now becoming an even more abbreviated version as we go along. But in terms of learning the music itself, it's thankfully because of Michael's genius, you know, it's joy to sing this music. It's relatively easy singing.
This is the moment that I point out that for Jamez, singing Bacchus and Aria de Apnaxos is a Tuesday morning. So put it in context.
Yeah, when you hear him sing, you'll hear his definition of easy. You'll put that in a different context.
But when I first got the music, I was absolutely stunned. You know, the beautiful, like just the beautiful chord progressions that just came from the sketches that Rhiannon sent him. It was just unreal. And you know, I sat there with the score and I just played through the score, and I knew instantly that this was going to be one of the most important pieces of my life. I sat there and I was thinking to myself, I can't approach this like I do any other piece. So I said that I would even put together performances before I even got to Spoleto to rehearse with people, which is, I've never even thought of doing that before. And I learned all of the lines, the chorus, every single role in the show, and I gave two concerts where I spoke about the history beforehand. In between each scene, I explained what was going on in each scene, and I just sang through the entire opera for a select group of audience, a selected group, and it brought me to a new spiritual level where I felt so connected to who this person was as an individual, even with the sparse information we have of him, you know. So that was my journey of figuring out who this man was, you know.
And so at the end of a performance, how does this story sit with you as an artist? Is Omar now a part of you forever as an artist? Can you let it go?
I mean, his story of perseverance, as you mentioned, you know, it's even more specifically, it's a story of maintaining your own truth, you know. And so I took that away from me as the biggest overarching theme, because and I try to apply it to my life, because inside of this career, you always have to make negotiations. You have to always bend to what other people want from you, you know, instead of standing up for yourself or making sure that you are getting what you need positively, you know. And just his strength to maintain, to, yes, he had to forcibly, you know, convert to Christianity, but it's the fact that he, in his writing, was referencing in his own Islamic faith through Christianity. When in his writing, it was just something that, you know, you have to take with you, and it's just it's hard to put into words, because what he had to go through was just so difficult, you know. And to try and make a comparison between who I am as a person, who he is as a person, is difficult. And you just try to take what you can from his strength, you know.
So this work is quite anomalous in terms of new opera, in that it will be heard in the first 18 months of its life. It'll be heard in 6 American cities, which is pretty extraordinary. you know, you can't possibly cast your mind this far into the future, but, you know, I'm always interested in the context in which work is received, because it has to do with the place and the set of assumptions that people come into the theater with. How this piece sits in Charleston, South Carolina, and how it sits in Los Angeles are radically different. I'd love to hear from all of you, and you know, we haven't opened yet in Los Angeles, about how you think about what it means for this story and this work of art to be changed by the context in which it sits. And I say that as someone who's part of an industrial complex of predominantly white organizations, and so, you know, the piece will be received within that context as well. So, Michael?
I'm just shaking my head because we haven't opened yet.
Yeah, no, I know. I said, yeah.
But I mean,
you're Angelino, and so.
Yeah. I mean, I've speculated about that. I certainly going to Charleston for the premiere and being where it all, including some of the sites are still there, really brought it home. I was just struck by how sometimes even opera that's based on a true story, right? If it's ancient and takes place in another country, it feels like a fable on some level. But when you go to the site where it all went down, it's like very real. And I got that from going to Charleston for the premiere as an Angelino. So I think each person who comes to it will have an experience that they bring to it from their own life in that city, and after that we will see.
I think that at our best, at our collective best, delivering this music is an opportunity for everyone who touches it, administrators, performers, technicians, and every audience who walks through the doors to witness the work. It is an opportunity for all of us to understand our intimacy with this story and the amount to which this story has defined us, whether we are the first in our generational lineage to sleep on this soil or whether our families have been sleeping on this soil for generations. This story defines us and defines the world. The world understands itself through this story. And at our best, that intimacy, that individualized intimacy, different for every single person who hears this music, that is what we do at our best in each city.
Get that, Charleston had ghosts. Charleston is a hard place. I mean, if you've ever been there, it's always so strange to be in these places where there's like fashionable walking districts, and then a big sign says Old Slave Mart. And the work that is being done in Charleston, or as Jamez referenced, in our country right now, to forget our ghosts is real. And at the same time, for those of us who care about our ghosts, if you call them ancestors, if you call them whatever you call them, we care about our ghosts, right? And this is a way of caring for our stories. This is a way of caring for our histories. And that is how we best, I think, you know, as we go to each city, we realize that the ghosts are there everywhere, that we honor our ghosts, we talk to our ghosts, we talk to our histories, and that is the best that we can do, is talk to our histories, to not walk around with this amnesia that people want to have. There's like a drive toward amnesia in our country. You can see them talking in the history. We need to educate the children this way and that way. There's a drive toward amnesia, and this is part of the work that we are all doing as artists separately in our own practices, and in this beautiful moment of being able to come together to fight that amnesia. And that is really what this work is about. And I think that will happen in each city in different ways, because the amnesia is different in each city, but it's definitely something that we're all here to fight.
So how, in the creative process, how do you prepare the audience by preparing the artists that embody this story in very difficult, very sensitive material. How did you think about that in the composition, and then how do you guys carry that work forward? Because it's an unconventional rehearsal process in terms of carrying the weight of this.
It's my only part of that is there's two things. One is there's an overture to Omar, and it is a way of introducing the audience to the harmonic and musical language of the opera. And it starts with the first melody recorded of an enslaved person in the Americas. And it starts with that melody and then goes through it transforms into an orchestral version of that. And by way of some quasi-improvisatory, what we hope are Arabic-influenced phrasing. And the idea is to get the audience acclimated to that this is an opera, and it's not, it's not what you would expect as an opera. So that's part of it. The other part is I think it was important in talking to the chorus, in acknowledging before they even tried out that what the roles they were playing. The chorus is in 9 of the 10 scenes in this opera. It's crucial. And there are a lot of chorus solos because it was really important to Rhiannon that the chorus not be seen as a generic, and the black people. You see lots of individuals, and you see and you zoom in on for a second on their individual stories, and that's to bring them alive. But in getting people to audition for an experience like that, I think you have to prepare them for what that is, and you have to acknowledge what it is to play those roles, and that's an emotional journey. And I think it's important I think that'll be important anywhere that this piece is performed, is that you have to prepare the people who are in it, that they have an emotional experience as well as an artistic one. So.
One of the first things I say to especially the chorus, who in opera process you have very little time with, is that the institutions in which we are working were never made to hold this story in the way we're telling it. They were not made for this. The opera process is not made for that kind of individuation of character that is required to deliver this music. But the opera was made for this. The opera is made for this. The opera is built on hundreds of years of cultural exchange, is obsessed with encounters with others. We understand that this form is made to hold contradiction and hybridity and epic stories of inhuman feats of faith, of worlds being torn apart. This form is made for this work. And so our job is to create structures together that live outside of opera process. One strange thing that we do for opera is we share a lot of information and build systems together for the performance and run things in big passes. Everyone always is like, oh, you come from theater, that's why you do that. I'm like, no. I have 5 sessions to deliver an operatic score with individuated sense of responsibility for telling this story. And in order to do that in this context, you have to think this form with these people in a different way. And to me, that's about, we have a lot of shared, you get black people in the room, we have a lot of shared technology immediately that we can tap into and use structurally to hold this piece that the institution isn't actually made to hold, even though it is the finest institution to hold this form in the country. To be clear, the amount of support is unbelievable. I want to be very clear about what I'm saying. But it's not about people. It's literally, Christopher, you understand what I'm saying. These structures were never made to hold these stories. That's not what it is. But through the valiant collaboration and the exquisite excellence of how this particular LA Opera institution runs, we have been able to take care of this music and the demand of this music to have that kind of, particularly with the chorus, individuated presence. And it's this thing of that everything is true at the same time. That no, our cultural institutions were not made to talk about slavery, to talk about how wealth got built in this country. That's not what they were built for. But these are places that were built to take care of opera well. And this is an opera, and our job is to deliver the opera. And so how do we hold all of that simultaneously?
They say everything so eloquently, and then it comes down to me, and so I'm just like, what do I got to say now?
Yeah, well, how to follow that up? Actually, I have been, I feel so privileged, frankly, to have been a small part of this process, and frankly, to have encountered you all, and I think specifically because these kinds of conversations are exactly the kinds of conversations which are essential to the maintenance, growth, and evolution of the art form. And in the end, my job is that I'm a steward of a tradition, but to be a steward of a tradition is to question it and to make sure that it lives forward to the next generation. And so, while the people in this room have not had the privilege of actually being in the room with these artists, I would love, in deference to time, to just conclude with the idea. I think that your ideas about theater, frankly, are pretty revolutionary, and I think that you're working against some pretty entrenched headwinds about aesthetics and form and the way in which an audience receives work. So is this a question? It's an admiration of your courage to do that, and just where does that come from, that idea that actually you I think that the work that you're doing is kind of exploding some of these myths about what the relationship between artists and audiences are. Can you talk about your personal artistic journey in trying to tear down some of those walls? This is for Kaneza. Yeah. Sorry. Double mic moment.
I believe in the dreaming capacity of all audiences, and that we are built to enjoy story and enjoy the hybrid and enjoy complicated ideas. That is how we are built as humans. And what did you say to me just now? Did you say something under my breath about? Okay. Okay. And so, for me, great storytelling requires speaking many languages. And when you make a work, you make a feast, and everybody is invited to that feast. And you prepare that feast on behalf of specific audiences. And for me, those are often audiences who have been disinvited for generations into the hallowed halls in which we work. But I want everybody to eat. I prepare it on behalf of an audience, but my goal is that everybody eats. And I think there is a discomfort when lexicons that have not been privileged in our cultural institutions are privileged, and there can be a confusion and discomfort for audiences who are used to having the lexicons that they are most comfortable with privileged. But I believe that we can all eat, and that the idea of singularity and fixedness and that kind of obsession in the West of classification and dividing and naming and imagining things to be fixed that were never fixed, couldn't possibly be fixed, that actually isn't true. So ultimately, if we are working with our actual materials as best we can, we're all going to eat. That's my answer to your question.
So the only way to follow that up is actually with music. So we are very, very, very privileged this morning to have Jamez with us, who's going to sing for us a little bit. Jacqueline Eccles, who sings the role of Julie, and our pianist Leonard Hayes to bring some of Rhiannon and Michael's music to you. Again, thank you all so much for being here with us this morning. We hope that all of you can come experience this absolute masterpiece, instant classic. We open next Saturday and run for the following 4 weeks. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Your time and your spirit and of taking some time in a very challenging moment for you creatively. I really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. So just
Home is home, so near, so far. No more to roam, a different star. What accident. I am here by your hand. This is also your land. But can you tell me, oh Lord, why here you delivered me, oh most powerful? Why here you sent me a sign, the girl, send me another, as this unfair. Well, look who made it. I did, and I am in your debt. And speaking proper words too. And at a high price. Well, ain't everything that we know in this world, in our world anyway? Don't know what you've left behind, but you made it all right here. But I must know why me? Why me? My daddy wore a cap like yours. He got down on his knees and he faced the rising sun, and he did it again when the day was done. And he wouldn't eat this, and he wouldn't eat that, no matter the need, no matter the fact. He drove my mama crazy, but she loved him anyway. They found each other in the darkness. The way they looked at the world, was it the same? But the way that they looked
my shepherd, I shall not want. I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. Still waters, deep waters. Across the waters I came here against my will, terrified, caught in the crook of the path, in that unseen crook in the path. If you could see me, you would laugh. Well, first you'd cry. My tongue has gone silent, no ears will have heard. Instead I speak with another's words. This earth I had held within my hands. The ground turned red in a distant land. The time passes and the me I had known, the me I had owned, gives way to the me that I am now. In a perpetual bow. And yet, did I not already bow to you, O Lord? How much lower should I go? He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. But what is in the name? This Christian power, this 3-in-1, from God to Son, Son of mighty prophet indeed, just not mine. I already have what I need in the divine. I miss your voice, Mother. Your eyes, how wise you were, Mother. You knew the choice was never mine. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup,
traveled to New York for the revival of Porgy and Bess. It was a wonderful production, fabulous, magnificent singing, the stagecraft, everybody on stage. And do you know how odd it felt to have gone all the way to New York, that black cast, magnificent singing, and the entire artistic staff that came out directing was white people telling our story? It felt so strange. Say, well, wait, hold it. How is this possible that they could have such a disconnect? They could have such a blind spot. And thank the Lord that LA Opera said, now this is how you do it. So thank you. Thank you. We thank you. And we look forward to continued representation, not only on the main stage, but as the costume designers and the set designers and the stage directors and the people that conceptualize the choreography. All of that is important to our story. Thank you. There will be no offering taken. Dean Patterson wanted to make some announcement to you, and I think this I've dulled down the enthusiasm enough that if he could come up and speak to you very briefly before you make your break.
I'm going to defer making my bit of an announcement in favor of the power of that presentation and the taste that it is going to leave in our hearts and our minds and our musical ears. I'll find another time, hopefully, during the proceedings of this event to make that announcement. I just think we need to walk away in the spirit that has been created. Thank you.